So I'm gonna start recording now. But thank you all for coming. There is no real formal presentation. We just more want to talk about some of our successes and failures as we try to navigate our virtual open houses. I know some of you have had in-person open house type programs or campus visits. So this is really going to be geared towards those large events rather than the daily visits. We do have another one of these sessions coming up with the daily visits. So, you know, with that, I guess how many of you guys have done some virtual, like open house style events, and what are some of the successes that you've seen or some of the struggles that you've seen with those? All right. Not everybody at one time.
Hey, Taylor, I can talk for Columbus State. So with our virtual events, we saw a slow uptick on our registrations, but certainly with the yield was not what we would have liked to have seen. So that would have been some of the disappointment with moving it virtually. Some of the benefits, though, have been some of our international students have been able to participate and join, whereas they would not have been able to participate in this type of event in the past.
Very good. So for the other schools that are here, when you unmute yourself, say your name and then say what school you're at. Has anyone else seen an issue with attendance? Has attendance, the yield, for those who have registered, been better, worse than in traditional years? Like who's showing up? Is it high numbers, low numbers, that kind of stuff? So what are some of y'all's thoughts on that? Or I'm gonna call out Georgia Southwestern because they have quite a few.
You can jump in. Well, I mean, the virtual events, they've been okay. The smaller events we've done, I'll talk about the partnership we've done with you all. We partnered with Columbus State and West Georgia this year and did a grouping of kind of like what Probe's doing, that type of, everybody gets about 10 minutes to talk and then answer questions. And I think that's gone fairly well. By no means have the numbers been through the roof, but it is nice to have 3 schools advertising. You may have a student that gets on there thinking, all right, I want to go to an urban school, and then kind of decide later on, maybe I want something smaller. So they may think about Columbus State, but then listen to us, and then vice versa. You may have somebody that thinks they want a small school, then jumps on with somebody else. So kind of working together with some similar institutions based on location or something like that. We've done the same thing with ABAC and Coastal to have kind of a South Georgia presence and to try to pull more of those South Georgia students. So we've done 2 rounds. And you know, some of the events are better attended than most, but when you can't travel, having 10 people or 3 people is better than 0. So that's kind of what we've gone with. And the other nice thing is when they register for your event, you're getting their information. So even if they don't log in, they then go into your database so you can send them stuff or maybe try to get them to another event or something like that. So there is a value in registration as well. So.
Thank you, Jonathan. How about some other schools? What are some of y'all's successes? What do you see as far as attendance with everything being virtual, or if you've done in person, how has attendance been for those as well?
Hi, this is Susan Meltzer with Georgia Gwinnett College. As the first presenter stated from Columbus State, our preview day was virtual this past weekend, and we had a very slow uptick in registrations and got a good registration number. However, our participation, we only had about 53% actually log in and join our session. So, so not as what we would expect it with an in-person event. 2 weeks prior to that, we hosted a preview day drive-through, and we had much better attendance at that, and that was very successful. there's some other things that's probably playing into these numbers. We're doing a lot of info sessions that are very well received, and our participation numbers are good on those. So if you add up all of our events that we're doing, probably is equal or more than what we would have seen in just doing a one-day preview day. But I was shocked this past weekend at that participation day off, because the registration numbers were good. It was just the participation on the actual day was not what I would have expected.
All right, Susan, so you said something about a drive-in or drive-through open house. What did that look like? We're all going to copy that idea if it was successful for you. So how did you plan that? What did it look like? Who did you have involved? That kind of stuff.
So Atlanta Metro College actually did this earlier in the summer. And so we kind of played off of what they were very nice and shared what they did with us. And so I'm going to pay it forward with you as well. We hosted the event, and our goal is we're a college that people look at as being a commuter college. They're not really familiar with our campus. So our goal was to get people to actually see our campus and be able to see themselves on campus, but doing it in a safe way during this COVID situation. So we had it in our main quad area where they could circle and actually see, our main quad area. And then we had tents, everybody across our campus that would have participated in our preview day event. All the organizations, the schools, all the services, and everybody had a tent. We social distanced those all across our big parking lot. And so cars were able to pull up to the tent, ask questions. They got all kinds of information, got all kinds of swag from us. And it took about an hour, 40 minutes for cars to make it from the first, entering into the event to get through to the last area. And we didn't really have anyone, no one complained about the time period. We did stagger, we had them register ahead of time, and we staggered their arrival time to prevent that backup, because we weren't really sure with people in cars, how that would work. But it was a very successful event, and we will do that again. So you just have your school, your campus partners reach out. And I know Atlanta Metro did theirs a little different than we did. We had wanted to do where, maybe they went and parked somewhere and heard a welcome, but knowing that we were going to have a virtual preview day 2 weeks later, it was almost like we just split off the event into two days. And, the fair that you would normally have attached, where they could walk up to tables and talk to, parking services or testing or the schools, we just broke that out separately. So I hope that helps. I'm happy to share any information. If you want to contact me, if you have any questions, happy to share that with you.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting and really innovative and creative and very cool. It's great that nobody was frustrated, because that's something, certain majors are more popular than others, obviously, so there may be a line that's longer for a particular major, department, or program, but if staggering is really helpful.
Yeah, and we would have, in looking forward, we staggered it by 30-minute increments, but next time we do it, we will stagger it even more so. You just never know. Mm-hmm. I kind of like in the amusement park line where, they time, how long it's taking you to get through. So I was intentionally at the last tent so I could kind of get a pulse on, how long did it take you to get through? Were you able to get through? And one thing that we did have all of our schools, the academic folks, all in one area. And we have learned that we would separate those out a little differently. So that if somebody is stopped at that tent for a really long time having a conversation, it's not holding everyone else up behind them. I think the key is to make sure that you're giving good information Our schools had packets put together, nice, brochures, swag. So, everyone that I asked, how was your experience? It was all positive comments, even though it took them time to get through. They got all their questions answered. And I think that, we had families that drove. We had somebody that came from Tennessee. We had people that came from Augusta. So, for them not to feel rushed going through, I think is important that you design that so that no one feels like, well, I just wasted, 2 hours of my time. I didn't really get my questions answered. So,
I'm Susan. I'm looking at the press release on your website, and the pictures look awesome to show everything off. It looks like this was really well organized. It's impressive. So,
yeah,
good job. One thing I will throw out to anybody who's thinking about doing this, you can buy and it's like $100. You can buy them online. You can buy a low watt FM transmitter for basically like a radio station that's good for about a mile. And so that's a good way to talk to everybody, or have if you want to talk to people in their cars, have them tuned to a certain station. You can say whatever you want over it. So that would be kind of a neat thing. I don't know if y'all did that or not, or some schools are blessed with having a radio station. But if you don't have a radio station, that's a good, cheap way to add another element to it.
Yeah, we did not, but it was something that came up like right before the event. We just didn't have the time to pull that piece together. We did do a survey afterwards to see what kind of comments people made back, and that was one of the person said was more entertainment. So that's a good way to do that. So yes, I forgot about our press release. There's pictures out there. So if you actually want to go out and see some pictures, they're out there on our press release.
Jonathan, if you'll put that in the chat, and Susan, if you could put your email address in the chat, that'd be awesome if y'all could do that. Does anyone else have any different or creative ideas other than just the Zoom meetings? Or if you've done a virtual open house, how have you administered that? Have you done just different links for different rooms? I know Zoom is has come out with a feature where people can self-select their breakout rooms that just launched. Are you using a third party to help administer those? What are some of the ways that you guys are doing that?
Susan, again, with Georgia Bennett College, I will say we just hosted our first virtual open house, our preview day last weekend. We did Zoom and we did breakout rooms. It worked very well. I will say that we had, you need to have people monitoring the break, people not knowing where to go. So have a central place where people can ask, well, how do I get into the breakout room? Because we did have some people that just couldn't figure out, even though during, we had a 10-minute break between, we did a group welcome from the president, and then we did admissions financial aid, student success engagement office did a presentation, and then we had a 10-minute break in there, and then it started the breakout sessions. And during that 10-minute break, we sent out the links again to individuals. Some people were still confused. Most people got to where they needed to go. But it is good to have people monitoring, just so that if somebody's lost, they have a central place they can go back and ask questions.
Hey everybody, Mike Smith, Georgia Southern. Good to see everybody. We just finished up. We had our first virtual Eagle preview open house October. We have our second one coming up November 14th. So what we did is, and I'll be happy to drop the link so y'all can look at it in just a minute. I'll have to find it, go back and get it for you. But so we created a Google Sheet initially with all of our breakout sessions on it. I assigned a member of our staff to each session to host that session. So they set up the Zoom links and all the invites out to our campus partners. We had student ambassadors that were there as well to kind of take attendance and do some things like that. Our welcome was through the webinar feature. That was a live welcome where we kind of went through the schedule for the day. And then we broke off into different breakout sessions. And then we had Our virtual tours, we do those through Google Hangouts, not through Zoom. So we had some sessions that were Zoom, some that were Google Hangouts, and we created a landing page. So we had the event landing page that had all of the links already. You just clicked on the one that you wanted. And so at the end of each session, our session host would drop the landing page back into the chat at the end of each session for them to kind of go back to and navigate which next session they wanted to go to. Seemed to work really, really well. Didn't have too many issues of people trying to get logged in or anything. It's hard to kind of track attendance, so that's kind of the hard part. Is we have I assigned ambassadors. I created a little Google form for them to be able to fill out, and that was their main job, was to try to capture as many folks as they could. But that seemed to work pretty well, and that's what we're going to continue to do in November. But I'll be happy to drop the link for our landing page and let everybody take a look at that. I'll do that in just a second.
Yeah, I would like to see that, Mike. Thanks for sharing
sure.
that. Yeah, did you see, I noticed it seemed like we had people that dropped off and see, trying to count like you, trying to count how many people were in each of those sessions. That probably is one of the biggest challenges, just trying to keep attendance in each one of those breakout sessions. So I was curious as, did you have much success with that? Because I felt like we lost people that, maybe didn't come back after our little mini break, or they just didn't know how to get back, even though, like you, we were putting all the links back out there so that people could get where they needed to go.
Surprisingly, we didn't. We lost some doing the welcome through webinar. We obviously had a registration for that, so we were able to capture those pretty easily. There were some that skipped the welcome that came in, but for the most part, most people went to the welcome. There was probably maybe 10 or 15% of those that did not come to the welcome, but then jumped into different breakout sessions that we had to try to do. The hard part is when you got people logged on and they're like iPhone user or something like that, you have no idea who they are. So we do ask them at the beginning of each session to drop their name into the chat feature so we can, get them accounted for. But, not everybody participates. We did the best we could. I felt like we got as many as we could get. Let's put it that way. There were probably maybe 4 or 5 that I could not figure out who they were, honestly, but that was about it, based on the numbers. And then what we could do too is we're Slate. We're a Slate school, so we were able that you can check in through Slate as well. So that was one way to do it. If they clicked on the link in Slate, we sent out a reminder email right before the event, and all they had to do was click on the link in Slate, and they could just check in automatically. That was helpful as well, because that got us some that we may not have been able to capture.
Mike, about how long was y'all's day total? A couple hours, hour?
We advertised at 9 to 1. So our welcome, we did our welcome session at 9 a.m. And then we had 4 different breakout session times. They were all 30 minutes apiece. Then we did host virtual tours throughout the day. Our last one started at 1 o'clock. So all in all, 3 hours, 4 hours, really depending. Most people just kind of pick and choose. Most people were there about 3 hours. They didn't stay for the last part. We did have some that did the very end virtual tour, but we did advertise 9 to 1. And we had somebody in every session. That was one of my fears, was we would have sessions. We had at least one person in every session. Our last virtual tour had upwards of 25, 30 people in it. So we had people that stuck around for the majority of the time.
Very good. Susan, for your virtual event, about how long of a time period or time frame did you guys do that?
We held ours to 2 hours because we felt like people have virtual fatigue, and since we were doing it on a Saturday, we wanted to be mindful of their time. I will say some of our breakout sessions went over the 2-hour mark. We'd probably do 2.5 next time based on some of the breakout sessions. People were asking questions and we did not want to cut them off. So I would probably do 2.5 next time at a minimum. Just make sure that everyone has the opportunity, especially in those breakout rooms after the presentations, if they have specific questions, they can get the answers if they deserve.
Cool, thank you. I mean, one thing that we did was we spread everything out over a few days here at Columbus State. So there was things going on Saturday, some live, some pre-recorded. Sunday was more pre-recorded, and then throughout the week we used different platforms to administer some of our sessions. So we used Zoom, Instagram, and various things just to try to cut down on that fatigue, because we know that's something that all of our students face. And so there was just a little bit each day. So that was a little bit different way that we administered our Discovery Day. It was really more of a Discovery Week. And so students could pick and choose what they would attend. So that was a little bit different. So that's definitely something to think about. It cuts down your resources and the amount of time that the students are spending, and then your staff is spending each day. So we're able to divide everything up throughout the week to different people, even though we encourage all of our staff to attend everything.
Or one of the things we did too that was helpful, I think, when trying to capture the student participation, is we did text out a link for just a Google form so they could try to self-check in. So that way, if they do show up as iPhone user or whatnot, we would try to get that information from them early on with an incentive. So that did help us capture and get those check-ins, or self-check-ins rather.
Is anyone offering any incentives to attend these events? Like, we are offering an application fee waiver if you attend our Discovery Day. If you're a senior, I know West Georgia is offering up a scholarship, like a $250 scholarship if you attend. Not everyone gets one, but the opportunity to win one. Has anyone else offered anything else or any incentive for students to attend their events?
Yes, Mike, again, we do a fee waiver as well for all attendees. We actually send that out to them after they've attended.
Mike, do they have to attend just any one particular event or all of them? Is there a minimum?
No, as long as they check in and we can verify they were there, we send it to them.
Okay.
Yeah, and we have around our preview day at Georgia Gwinnett, we always offer a free application for a few days around our event. And whether they attend or not, they still have the opportunity for the free application.
Okay. What are some of the questions that you guys have for other schools about some of these events, or even some of the small in-person events? You can feel free to unmute yourself, or what were you hoping to learn here today?
Yeah, I am curious. Once again, Susan from Georgia Gwinnett. I am curious. We have not held, other than our drive-through preview day, we have not held an in-person event. But earlier today in a meeting, our vice president asked that I start working on a small in-person event. So I'm very curious, have any of you held an in-person event, and kind of how did you do that, and was it a very specific target audience? What's your thoughts on that?
So I'm happy to jump in. We are not doing virtual preview days. We are doing on campus. What we ended up doing was we have several scheduled. We are only doing registration for the next 2 or 3 out. We're not opening up registration yet for April. We're going to see what's happened because we don't want to have to cancel people. But typically we do 3 preview days a year. We have about 100 to maybe 150 people, students at each. So our goal, we're smaller so we can do this. Our goal was to offer about 7 or 8 of them and try to get about 30 to 50 students at each. So we had one in October. Attendance was very low. We had around 20 students at that one, but we have another one coming up here in a week and a half. And right now we're on track to probably have about 40 based on registrations. We're on track to have probably about 40, maybe 45 there, just depending on what registers within the next week. So that's really what we're shooting for. And what we have done is kind of simplified preview day, lessened the number of people involved. We, instead of doing an academic session with each major and them going to that, instead they're going by colleges and hearing from each college, so we can kind of deal with those smaller numbers, because I knew with only 40 students coming, we weren't going to have an English major at every single one of them, and those smaller majors, and I didn't want those faculty upset. So doing that by colleges. We are still having a student fair, but that hopefully all of those will be outside. If not, they will be spread out with our student organizations, because we did want them to see those. But just kind of simplifying everything a little bit and trying to keep everybody spread out, using our entire gym for 150 people with family and guests rather than putting them on the floor. We're going to have them spread out throughout the gym. So that's kind of the direction we've gone into, is having several small preview days and lessening the involvement with people on campus so they don't get overrun.
Yeah, so just to clarify then, Jonathan, so you're doing so 30 to 50 students. Okay, that's good. Just clarify, when you say by college, so is every college participating, or are you just limited, like this week's, this particular one is for School of Business, this one's Health Sciences. You're doing them all in one session, but not breaking out, just having them maybe do an overview?
Right. Instead, each college, they've got to talk about the majors for the individuals that are in their rooms, is basically what it is. And so in arts and sciences, and we told arts and sciences we were happy to separate between arts and sciences. Right now, they've just met together. We'll see when we have a larger group, if they want to separate, but they are going to talk about the programs that are within their college. We have 4 colleges. Education, obviously, that's pretty easy. But with health science, they've got nursing, exercise science, and a long-term care. So there's 3 programs, so that's pretty easy. Business and computing, they've got 3 different degrees, some different concentrations, but that's pretty easy. And I think they actually separated the students once they got there. That's fine if they want to do that. I just wanted the academic side of the house to understand you may not have everybody for every major. We're going to bring them to you, because we're using less tour guides as well, because we have less people. We can't take people in 30 different directions across campus. So we are taking them there. They can split them if they want. And with smaller numbers, it's kind of easier to talk to them in a group. It is not perfect, but
nothing in COVID
went well.
Right? Did you offer, sorry, I keep jumping in here, but I'm very curious about this. Did you offer a campus tour that day? At these events, you're doing a campus tour?
We are.
So I'm sure you're using your student ambassadors.
We are.
Are you limiting it by how large of a group? How are you doing that?
What we're doing is and I'll post the schedule. I'll post a link to the schedule. But basically, the students come in the morning. They check in. We have about 4 or 5 campus resource tables, just kind of the important ones: admissions, financial aid, housing, student activities, just kind of those main ones that students are going to be interested in. And in the past, we've had more than that, but trying to cut down on the number of people who are there, so they can mingle with those a little bit in the morning. Then we have a 30-minute welcome, hear from our president, that type of thing. We go straight into a 30-minute session about admissions, the process, everything, and they're all in the gym for that hour. And then we break into groups. They go with their academic group. Once they hear from that academic group, then they go on a campus tour. And then after that campus tour is over, then they flow into our student activity fair, and us giving them a t-shirt before they leave and that type of thing. So that way it kind of spaces everything out, with people getting to the student activity fair. The tours aren't going to end at the same time. And if we have, nursing's going to be our largest group, we're probably going to have 15 to 20, probably 15 students. So we'll probably break those up into at least probably 4 groups, having about 3 families per group to keep the groups at around 10 people per group, maybe 12 at the most.
Jonathan, what are y'all doing as far as like how many total registrants, knowing that your yield rate is going to be a certain percentage?
Our yield rate was about 60% on the first one. Our yield rates with preview day rate anywhere from about 45% to as high as about 65 to 70% on a normal preview day. So in guessing how many people are going to show up is absolutely impossible. But we had about 60%. So my goal is to cut off our registration right around 90 students. We're going to look at where we are at this one and see what that percentage is, and we may adjust. But it's a floating number. You never know. So I feel like we'll be more in that 60% range, just because I feel like less people are going to spontaneously sign up. We're doing a little bit less to promote it because we're spreading out that promotion. So we're doing kind of an even amount, but instead of packing it on 3, we're kind of spreading out. It's almost a constant communication about come to a preview day. There's one next month. So we were going to have one for December, but the best date for it was our graduation, and we've decided to have an on-campus graduation. So that got changed to a Saturday tour. We're still going to do it just as a Saturday tour, and we'll have less people because it's not a preview day. So,
Jonathan, are y'all limiting it to a certain number of guests with a student?
We've tried to do that. It's impossible. People don't listen. They're going to bring what they want to bring, and I'm not going to tell them that little brother's got to leave. So,
okay. So you're aiming for 30 to 50 students plus an average of 2 or more guests, right?
Yeah, 2 is kind of typical. We kind of anticipate 2, and the gym is plenty big enough to handle it, so we're not worried about that. The academic sessions are the only area that could be a problem, but I figure at most we'll have 50 people in our nursing session. That's going to be the biggest one, and the room that they're in is big enough to spread out with about 50 people. It's easy enough. I mean, with about that, they can spread out. So based on how we set up the day, I think we're going to be fine. If 60 show up versus 50, it'll be fine.
Jonathan, do you feed them?
We do not. We have in the past. We are not this year.
Okay.
It's another thing of simplifying it. We are offering an optional 12:15 session. The day ends right at 12. We have a Georgia student finance rep that is coming to every single one to do a FAFSA, like an actual workshop. You're going to fill out your FAFSA. We've got 3 computer labs reserved, and if we need 3, we've got them, and our staff will help if needed, but hopefully she can handle it. And I'm sure all of you had issues with financial aid, people applying for financial aid last year, because everyone did. So that's one way we're trying to combat that, is to start on them early and to let them start. We added that late to our last one, and we had about 3 families stay. So we added that earlier and telling people earlier. So I'm anticipating I'm hoping for about 20% to stay and do that. So.
Hi, this is Bailey. I work at Columbus State. We, with Taylor and Kristen, but one of my colleagues at a different college, it's a smaller college, they did an in-person Discovery Day as well, and they had actually 2 in the day. So instead of feeding them lunch, they had 25 people at the first session and 25 people at the second session, and cut the day in half. And each family had their individual table, so they would check in, and then they would place their name badge and like a goodie bag on the table. So each family had their own table during the welcome, and then they split the tours up to, I want to say, 2 or 3 families per tour guide. So, and if y'all want some more information, I can drop the ladies' email in the chat as well.
Cool.
Bailey, do you have any idea what they did to make sure those 25 people actually showed up? Because that was my biggest concern with that, is how do you make them show up?
Yeah, she told me that they had 19 people show up to the first session and 12 show up to the second session. And like I said, it's a smaller college. So that's one thing that she said it was pretty consistent with what their normal show up rate is. But they pushed it, and with it being a smaller college, I know their counselors individualize their output to their students who had registered. She said it was hard because it was 2 discovery days in the same day, but she said it was a good turnout.
All right, what other questions? What else were some of you hoping to get out of this session, or questions that you had to be answered?
Hi, this is Susan again. I do have a question. Taylor, I think you mentioned it, maybe, or Jonathan, I can't remember which one mentioned it. You mentioned University of West Georgia offered a scholarship opportunity to those who attended their preview day, or their, whatever they call theirs, open house. What type of scholarship, what type of scholarship that was, and did anyone who attended qualify for that?
I do not know. I received an email because I'm on their listserv because of the event that West Georgia Southwestern I have. So I'm on their listserv now. And I didn't click through to register because I didn't know if they were limiting the space, and I didn't want to take a space away. But that's something I may do. Is there anybody from, I don't think there's anybody from West Georgia here. If there is, please let us know if anybody knows who they're giving that to, or how do you qualify. I can forward you the email, Susan, and maybe I'll go register and find out how they're doing that.
I can place maybe over there as well.
Hey, we normally do $1,000 scholarship. We're not this year because of how many we're doing, but we offer $1,000 scholarship. We limit it to juniors and seniors, and we pre-print a card with their name on it in their high school. And when they check in, they take that card and put it in a bin. And at the end of the day, we would bring everybody back together to say thanks for coming, a few little messages before we send them to lunch or on their tour. We would do the drawing at that point. So biggest pain is if it's a junior, you got to remember for 2 years to make sure you post it in 2 years. And you technically could have $6,000 1 year and $3,000 or and zero 1 year and keeping up with it. But if the student doesn't enroll, you don't lose any money. If they don't get admitted, you don't lose any money. So typically we average about $2,000 a year that's actually given out.
Taylor, I have a question. I know a lot of people have kind of shared this, but just still curious on the yield rates, because again, we're seeing that ours are lower than even our in-person. So I'm just curious to what you're doing. We're doing emails. We do text students prior to the event and then about 30 minutes before each event session. So just curious what else you guys are doing to engage with those students to help with your show rates.
Don't be shy. There's no wrong answer. No one wants to give away their secret sauce. That's all right. We'll just figure it out. We'll register for your events and we'll just figure out how you're doing it on the back end. No big deal. Okay.
I can't talk. I'm on that.
So we'll move forward from that. That's a great question. But we will move forward from there. I know that it's been a lot of the USG schools that have been answering. Are there any of our private school or technical college colleagues who have done some virtual stuff or looking at some, or have done in person? You can raise your hand if you want through the buttons, the reactions, or just acknowledge that you have or you have not.
The school that I was speaking of is a private university.
Thank you.
This is Monica at West Georgia Technical College. We've done some virtual open houses, as well as we generally, before COVID, had hosted Tour the Tech on Tuesday, on the third Tuesday of every month, and we have moved that to virtual now as well.
So Monica, like how many students do you guys typically have for in person, and what does that look like as far as virtual?
It would vary depending on the time of the year, of course, but we would only have usually 5 to 10 students in person and per campus, because we would do it on each of our 5 locations. And we're getting between 70 and 100 per session virtually.
Wow, that's great. Are you're doing it overall? You're not breaking those out by location anymore?
No, we don't have enough staff to do it that way, so we're having to just let one campus take it on at a time and kind of rotating it.
Okay. Very good. Okay. Well, if you don't have anything else, or I don't want to just sit here and take away from people's time, but if you have anything else, please unmute yourself. If not, thank you guys for participating and coming to this. We will be posting this on the GACRAO YouTube channel or page. So share it with your colleagues and continue to support GACRAO and do some of the other sessions that we have coming up next week and the following weeks. Just a reminder, we also have our business meeting, annual business meeting coming up next Tuesday, November 10th at 1. So please attend that if possible. And we also have one more of our Black and Enrollment Management Series events coming up next Wednesday at 2. So we hope to see you at all of those. But thank you so much for attending, y'all, and go GACRAO.